There's a moment that changes how a man sees women forever. It doesn't come from a book, a quote, or advice from friends. It comes from experience, usually after confusion, mixed music signals, emotional highs, emotional crashes, and that one question he keeps asking himself: why did she change? At first, everything felt easy. Music was warm, engaged, curious. Messages flowed, laughter was natural, attention came freely. He felt chosen. Music. And then, without warning, something shifted. She didn't disappear, she didn't argue, she didn't explain, she just pulled back. Energy music dropped, responses slowed, emotional warmth cooled, and the more he tried, the worse it felt. He gave more attention, more reassurance, more effort. Music, more emotional availability. He thought love meant showing up stronger when connection weakened. But instead of bringing her closer, music, it felt like she was drifting further away. And that's when frustration starts turning into obsession, not with her, but with understanding what he's missing. Here's the truth: most men never see music until it's too late. Women don't pull away because you cared too little. They pull away when emotional dynamics lose balance. Attraction is not built only on kindness, attention, and communication. Those matter, but they are not the engine. The engine is emotional polarity, the invisible tension between two emotionally whole people. When that tension collapses into emotional chasing, overinvestment, or over-explaining, the energy changes. She doesn't lose respect. She loses the emotional charge she felt in your presence. But men don't notice when the shift happens because the shift is subtle. It's the moment his emotional focus starts revolving around her reactions. His mood depends on her replies. His confidence dips when her energy dips. He starts leaning emotionally, music, even if his words stay calm. And women feel this instantly. Not consciously, not logically, but emotionally. And when she feels that your emotional state is becoming attached to her validation, something switches inside her. The dynamic moves from attraction to responsibility. She stops feeling drawn toward you and starts feeling that she must manage the emotional tone of the interaction, and responsibility is heavy. Desire is light. This is the side of female psychology, music, most men never see. Attraction fades not when you care, but when you emotionally center your world around her. And once you music see this, everything changes. Because the goal is not to chase less as a strategy. Music, it's to become someone who doesn't need to chase at all. Before we start, a quick reminder: the real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube, it happens inside the community. Music. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset. Completely? It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood, a private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. Music? You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson, music is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits. Just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, music, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community, enroll music once, grow forever. Let's dive in. Number 1, why attention lowers attraction when it comes from emotional need. Most men grow up believing that if a woman seems distant, music, the solution is more effort, more messages, more care, more reassurance, more presence. On the surface, that sounds logical. If connection weakens, music increases connection. But emotional attraction does not work like a problem to be solved. It works like energy. Music and energy changes, meaning depending on the source it comes from. Attention given from confidence feels music warm. Attention given from emotional need feels heavy. The actions may look identical: texting, calling, music, checking in, being available. But the emotional signal behind them is completely different. Women don't respond only to behavior. Music. They respond to the emotional state underneath behavior. And when attention is driven by the fear of losing her, the fear is what she feels first. Here is the part most men miss. When your attention is calm, steady, and part of your natural life rhythm, she experiences it as interest. It feels good. It feels chosen. But when your attention increases because her energy dropped, she feels music, the shift. Your focus is no longer coming from abundance, it's coming from emotional reaction. Music. And reaction means your emotional state is now tied to her responses. That changes the dynamic. Attraction needs emotional polarity, the sense that music, both people are choosing each other, not emotionally depending on each other. But when a man's emotional tone starts leaning toward a woman's behavior, polarity music collapses. She no longer feels drawn toward him. She feels that he is leaning toward her. And leaning energy removes tension. Tension is not conflict. It's the subtle music space between two independent emotional worlds. When that space disappears, emotional electricity fades. Music. The connection becomes emotionally safe, but not emotionally charged. And women, music, feel this instantly, even if they can't explain it. Suddenly, she doesn't feel the same anticipation when she sees your name. She doesn't feel the same curiosity, not because she dislikes you, but because emotional predictability replaced emotional polarity. She senses that you need reassurance from her energy, and that creates responsibility. Responsibility is the opposite of desire. She does not want to manage how you feel. She wants to feel drawn to you freely. When she feels emotionally responsible for maintaining the connection's energy, her system instinctively pulls music back to regain emotional balance. This is why chasing never works the way men expect. It doesn't show strength. It shows emotional dependency. And emotional dependency removes the very thing that created attraction in the first place, emotional music, independence. The irony is powerful. The more you try to secure attraction through effort driven by fear, the faster attraction fades. But when attention comes from calm self-assurance, it feels attractive because it is not trying to control the outcome. Once you understand this, music, you stop asking, how do I get her attention? And start asking, what emotional state am I giving attention from? And that question changes everything. Number two, the hidden emotional shift that makes women pull back without explaining. When a woman starts pulling back without a clear reason, most men search for an external cause. They look for something they said, something they didn't do, music, another guy, a mistake, bad timing. But in many cases, the real music change didn't happen outside. It happened inside her emotional perception of the dynamic, and it happened quietly. Attraction doesn't usually die from one big event. It fades when the emotional experience of being around you changes. And music hears the shift. She stops feeling emotional tension and starts feeling emotional certainty. At first, uncertainty works in your favor. She wonders what you're thinking. She feels your presence, but doesn't feel that she completely has you figured out. Your emotional world feels self-contained. Music, you enjoy her, but your life clearly exists beyond her. That creates polarity. She feels drawn in curious music, emotionally stimulated. But then something subtle changes. She starts feeling that your emotional focus is leaning toward her. Your availability increases. Music. Your emotional responses become more predictable. Your attention feels constant. You reply music fast, initiate often, and adjust your emotional tone based on hers. You're still kind, still respectful, still interested. But now, music, the interaction feels emotionally safe in a different way. Safe from uncertainty, safe from emotional tension, and when tension disappears, attraction cools. Not because she doesn't like safety, music, but because romantic attraction is different from comfort. Comfort grows when everything feels stable and certain. Music. Desire grows when there's a balance between connection and emotional independence. When she feels that you are emotionally invested in a way that centers her, the mystery fades. Her nervous system reads this as emotional weight. She may not think music, he changed. She feels the energy feels different. Music. Conversations feel less exciting. Interactions feel predictable. Music. She doesn't feel pulled toward you. She feels like you're already there emotionally leaning in. And here's the key. Women rarely explain this shift, music, because they don't experience it as a clear thought. It's a feeling, an emotional drop in charge. So instead of saying the emotional polarity changed, music, she says, I don't know. Something just feels off. Or she slowly becomes less engaged. From her side, she isn't rejecting you. She's responding to a loss of emotional tension. When she stops feeling that internal pull toward you, her system creates space to rebalance. That space looks like distance, shorter replies, music, less initiative, lower emotional energy. Men react to this by trying to increase connection, which pushes the dynamic further into emotional certainty, music, and removes the last traces of tension. The tragedy is that nothing bad happened. The connection didn't collapse because of music conflict. It faded because emotional polarity turned into emotional predictability. Once you see this, music, you understand that attraction is not sustained by effort alone. It is sustained by emotional self-containment, mystery, music, and the sense that you are choosing her without emotionally revolving around her. And that's the side of women most men never see. They don't pull back because they don't care. They pull back because the emotional charge changed. Number 3, the calm mindset that makes chasing completely unnecessary. The moment a man stops chasing music isn't the moment he decides to play hard to get. It's not a strategy. It's not a tactic. Music. It's a psychological shift that happens when his emotional center moves back inside himself instead of outside in someone else's reactions. Chasing begins when your emotional state depends on the outcome. If she replies warmly, you feel good. If she's distant, your mood drops. If she shows interest, your confidence rises. If she pulls back, anxiety music grows. That is emotional outsourcing. Your inner stability is now controlled by external signals. And the moment that happens, your behavior starts changing in ways you don't even notice. Your tone becomes more careful. Your attention becomes more frequent. Your thoughts revolve around what to say next, how to keep music her engaged, how to avoid losing the connection. This mental state is subtle, but women feel it instantly because emotional need has a different energy than emotional interest. Music. Interest says, I enjoy you. Need says, I music need this to go well. And need always creates pressure. Even if your words are relaxed, the calm mindset that ends chasing comes from a simple internal truth. Your life. Direction is more important than the emotional outcome of any one connection. When this becomes real, not as an idea, but music as a lived reality, your behavior changes automatically. You still care. You still show interest. But your nervous system is not attached to controlling the emotional pace. If she leans in, music great. If she leans back, you stay grounded. Your focus remains on your goals, music, your routine, your growth, your world. That emotional independence is deeply attractive, not because it's distant, music, but because it signals self-sufficiency. She feels that being with you is music a choice, not an emotional obligation. And choice is where desire lives. The calm mindset also removes fear-based action. You don't text more because you're afraid of losing her. You don't over-explain feelings to secure reassurance. You don't monitor every shift in tone. Your emotional world continues moving forward regardless of temporary fluctuations in connection. And here's the paradox. When you stop emotionally chasing, she often feels more drawn to you because emotional space reappears. Polarity returns. Curiosity grows. She no longer feels that her level of engagement determines your emotional state. Chasing stops not when you pull away physically, music, but when you pull your emotional stability back into yourself. You still connect, you still express, music, but you don't lean. And when a woman senses that your presence in her life adds to her world without emotionally depending on it, attraction breathes again, that's when chasing becomes unnecessary. Music, because you're not trying to get chosen. You're already choosing yourself. Number 4, why women feel more drawn to the man who isn't trying to secure them. There is something deeply misunderstood about attraction, and it becomes obvious only when you step back and observe patterns instead of chasing outcomes. The men who try the hardest to secure a woman's attention often feel the most frustrated, while the men who are simply grounded in themselves seem to attract without force. This isn't luck, it's emotional psychology. When a man is trying to secure a woman, his focus is on outcome control. He wants to make sure she stays interested, make sure she doesn't pull away, make sure he doesn't lose momentum. That internal pressure subtly leaks into his behavior. Music. He texts to maintain connection, speaks to reassure, adjusts his tone to avoid mistakes, and pays close attention to her emotional temperature. Even when done calmly, the underlying energy says, I'm trying to hold this together. Women feel that not as a thought, music, but as emotional weight. When she senses that a man is trying to secure her, she begins to feel like the emotional anchor of the interaction. Music. The connection starts revolving around her. Reactions. That may sound flattering, but it quietly removes polarity. Instead of feeling drawn toward him, she feels that he is leaning toward her. Leaning reduces emotional tension, and emotional tension is the spark that fuels desire. Now compare that to a man who is present, but not trying to control the emotional outcome. He enjoys her company. Music. He expresses interest, but his emotional state is not attached to where the interaction goes. His life direction continues. Music. His mood stays consistent. He doesn't act from fear of losing her because his sense of self doesn't depend on the connection working out. This emotional self-containment creates a completely different experience for her. She feels freedom. Freedom is emotionally attractive, music, because it removes pressure. She doesn't feel responsible for keeping the connection alive. She doesn't feel like her responses determine his emotional stability. Music. Instead, she feels that being around him is a choice she can make without emotional burden. And desire grows where choice exists. Another reason this dynamic works is because uncertainty returns in a healthy way. She can feel that he values her, but she can also feel that he doesn't need to secure her to feel okay. That balance creates curiosity. She wonders what he's doing, what he's thinking, what direction his life is moving. Curiosity creates emotional movement toward him rather than emotional management of him. The man who isn't trying to secure her communicates confidence without saying a word. He shows that connection with him adds to music life, but doesn't define it. That signals emotional strength. And emotional strength feels safe and exciting at the same time. So she leans in not because she's being pursued, but because she feels drawn. And that's music, the difference. The more you try to secure someone, the more the connection feels heavy. The more emotionally grounded you are, music, the lighter and more attractive the connection becomes. That's why the man who isn't chasing often becomes the one she thinks about most. Number 5. The final realization that changes how you see women forever. At some point, every man who grows emotionally reaches a realization that completely rewires how he experiences attraction, relationships, and women in general. It's not a bitter realization. It's not about detachment or indifference. It's clarity. And once you see it, you never move the same way again. Here it is. Attraction is not something you create by doing more. Music. It's something that happens when you stop emotionally revolving around the outcome. Most men are taught to improve their chances with effort, say the right things, show more care, communicate more, be more available, prove value, and effort matters in life. But emotional attraction does not respond to effort the way achievement does. Attraction responds to emotional state. The final realization is that a woman's feelings are not controlled by how much you try. They respond to how you exist emotionally in her music presence. When you revolve around her reactions, your emotional state becomes dependent. Dependent energy feels unstable, even when hidden behind confidence. But when you revolve around your purpose, your growth, your direction, your internal world, your presence becomes grounded and grounded. Presence feels safe. Music strong and attractive. This is the shift from chasing to choosing. Before this realization, you move with the question, how do I keep her interested? After this realization, you, move with, does this connection fit the life I'm building? That shift alone changes your energy completely. You're no longer trying to be selected. You are evaluating compatibility from a place of self-respect. Music. And women feel that difference immediately. You're not colder, you're calmer, you're not distant, you're music-centered, you're not indifferent, you're self-contained. You still enjoy connection, but your emotional world doesn't shrink or expand based on one person's behavior. That emotional stability creates something powerful. She experiences you as a man whose life has gravity, music, and gravity attracts without effort. The truth is, women don't lose attraction because you cared. They lose attraction when they feel like the emotional center of your world. But when they feel that you have a strong inner world, they get to music be part of, not the foundation of desire, remains alive. This is the side of women most music men never see because they're too focused on doing instead of being. But once you understand that attraction grows around emotional self-sufficiency, not emotional pursuit, music, chasing stops naturally. Not because you force yourself to hold back, but because you no longer feel the need to push. You understand that connection is mutual movement, not emotional effort from one side. And from that place, you don't try to hold someone. You simply stand firm in who you are, and the right ones move closer on their own. Number 6, the silent power that makes you unforgettable. There is music, a level of presence a man reaches where he no longer tries to be impressive, convincing in music, or emotionally persuasive. He simply exists in a music state of inner steadiness, and that steadiness becomes the most attractive thing about music, him. This is the silent power that makes a man unforgettable, not because he chased, but because he didn't need to. When you stop emotionally chasing, something subtle but powerful happens. Your energy becomes calm instead of searching. You listen without trying to steer the interaction. You speak without trying to impress. You show interest without trying to secure. And because your emotional state is not leaning toward an outcome, your presence feels light yet grounded at the same time. Women remember how they feel around someone more than what was said. And a man who is emotionally self-contained creates a rare emotional experience. She feels music free, safe, and drawn all at once. Free music because she doesn't feel emotionally responsible for managing his state. Safe music because his energy is stable and non-reactive. Drawn because emotional polarity exists. She feels movement toward him rather than emotional weight coming from him. This silent power also creates emotional mystery. When a man's world clearly continues moving, his goals, his routines, his focus, she senses depth. She music feels that he has an inner life she can join, not a life waiting for her to fill it. That difference, music, changes everything. Instead of feeling like the center of his emotional universe, she feels like a part of a larger, grounded world, and being invited into a full life is far more attractive than being needed to complete one. Another effect of this energy is emotional contrast. When your presence is calm and self-assured, every moment of connection feels intentional, not desperate. A simple message carries weight. A shared laugh feels music genuine. Silence doesn't feel threatening. Space doesn't feel like rejection. The connection breathes music, and breathing connections feel alive. Over time, this creates something deeper than attraction. Emotional imprint. She associates you with steadiness, emotional ease, and music, inner strength. Even if circumstances change, even if distance appears, music, the emotional memory of how she felt around you, remains strong. Not because you tried to hold her, but because your presence felt grounding in a world where emotional chaos is common. The irony is powerful. The less you try to make someone stay, the more your presence feels worth staying for. Because what people are drawn to most is not effort. Music? It's emotional gravity. Gravity does not chase. It simply exists with strength, music, and things move toward it naturally. This is why once you truly see this side of women and attraction, music chasing ends on its own. You realize that your role is not to secure attention, but to cultivate a strong inner state. From that place, connection becomes a shared experience, not a pursuit. Music. And that silent, grounded presence, that's what makes you unforgettable without ever needing to chase. In short, when you finally understand this side of attraction, everything slows down inside you. Music. The urgency fades, the need to impress fades, the fear of losing someone fades, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally understand what actually creates connection and what quietly destroys it. The biggest shift is this: attraction doesn't grow from emotional pursuit, it grows from emotional self possession. Before this realization, you try to hold connection together, you monitor energy, you adjust behavior, you increase effort when you feel distance. You believe that if you just do more, say more, show music more, things will stay strong. But the more you try to control the emotional outcome, the more your energy leans outward. And when your emotional center lives outside you, music women feel that shift immediately. After this realization, your focus returns to where it always should have been: music, your own direction. Your mood no longer depends on response speed. Your confidence no longer rises and falls with someone else's attention. Your emotional state becomes internally regulated instead of externally triggered. And that stability changes how every interaction feels. You still connect. You still show interest. You still enjoy intimacy and conversation. But you no longer feel the internal pressure to secure anything. Connection becomes something you experience, not something you try to protect. And that emotional freedom is exactly what makes your presence attractive. Women are drawn not to the man who tries the hardest, but to the man whose emotional world feels grounded, steady, and self-sufficient. Because with him, connection feels light. There is no pressure to manage his emotions, no sense of being responsible for his happiness. She feels free to move closer because closeness music does not feel heavy. That is the hidden truth. Desire grows in emotional freedom, not emotional pursuit. Once you understand this, chasing doesn't feel wrong. Music. It feels unnecessary. You don't need to hold attention because your presence has gravity. You don't need music to push connection because connection flows toward emotional strength. You don't need to prove value because self-respect already communicates it. And from this place, something powerful happens. Relationships become mutual movement instead of emotional effort from one side. Interest becomes shared energy instead of emotional management. Music. You stop trying to be chosen and start choosing what aligns with your life. That's when attraction becomes natural. That's when your presence becomes memorable. And that's when chasing ends. Not as a rule you follow, but as a mindset you've outgrown. Remember, music knowledge means nothing without action. If you're ready to rise above emotion and lead with purpose, join the community today at the link below. Enroll once, grow forever.